I apologize in advance for the sound of my fan, but it is hot as fuck in my room and I need to talk. We are presently in very trying times of collective trauma. Atop of all the struggles and anguish and anxieties and turmoil that has been caused by the quarantine and self-isolation, there is a question of whether Black Lives Matter and arguments are being made against it. It is a blanket statement that does not require a response, nor does it deserve a yes but rebuttal. It is not the duty or job of any Black identifying person to have to explain and justify the meaning of Black Lives Matter. But I really want to educate and speak on this and explain why any argument against the idea that Black Lives Matter should not be had. Well, all lives matter. Saying Black Lives Matter means Black Lives Matter too. I have seen a couple of analogies that I think help to explain this and why the phrase coined has not been all lives matter. A house is on fire. You do not hose down every other house. Yes, all houses matter, but you're going to put out the fire of the burning house because that is the house that deserves the focus. Let's use the scenario that you are in a classroom and one child gets injured. You are not going to give attention and band-aids and help to every child in the classroom. You're going to aid that child that has been hurt. You're going to give attention to that child who has been hurt. Black people have been impacted and hurt and harmed by the integrated racial injustice that is threaded within all of the institutions and systems America is built on. Black crime in areas that are predominantly white, you never hear the term white on white crime. In areas that are predominantly Asian, you don't hear Asian on Asian crime. You don't hear Hispanic on Hispanic crime. That does not exist. Therefore, Black on Black crime does not exist. Yes, there is still crime amidst Black communities, but that is not because Black people are targeting other Black people. It is because crime is existing in a community. Kin tends to live with kin, which is a whole nother conversation regarding redlining and those types of topics of the racial injustices simply embedded in the housing. That is a conversation for another day. The likeness tends to live with likeness, and crime is still going to exist amidst these other communities. So it is not the attack of oneself, it is just the existence of crime in that community. Police kill white people too. If that is your immediate response to counter the Black Lives Matter movement, I do not find any logic. Why would you attempt to deface a movement whose whole goal is police reformation? You can acknowledge police brutality, but don't want to acknowledge its target is within, it does have targets within the Black community. That doesn't make any sense because the goal is still reformation of the police, of the policing systems. So why would you be against the movement? Solely because your community, your race is not the streaming headline of the movement? There are more statistics and papers written on this to demonstrate the likelihood of not all cops are bad is a true sentiment. Not all cops are bad people, but the movement is not saying that the cops are bad. It is saying the system of policing is bad. The entire system has been built up on negative connotations with black people. The original police systems that existed in this country were slave patrols to help control and punish runaway slaves. And that has over time developed into the current policing system. There's also statistics and facts and developments and studies that have shown the drastic difference in probabilities of how likely a black person is to be arrested or stopped and searched compared to white people and non-black people of color, the difference in sentencing times, and other injustices that exist within the so-called justice system. And it is showing that the laws systematically work against black people. Peaceful protests versus riots. People try and say that peaceful protests would get the job done, would enact the change that needs to be had. But there's already evidence that that is not true. Martin Luther King Jr. attempted peaceful protests. He was assassinated. Kaepernick tried kneeling peacefully as a protest. Americans did not appreciate that either. There's been a plethora of peaceful protests that have tried to enact to bring attention to these issues that have not resulted in change. Riots have built up the majority of America and have caused for change and difference to establish the America that we have today. People say that they do not want, that damaging property is not the proper way to go about things. But if you look back in history, the history of America, i.e. the Boston Tea Party is a moment in history that led to Americans' independence. Okay, that's a riot just for an example. People used to tar and feather tax collectors. Using riots and the destruction of property to induce change is reasonable in a capitalistic society where they value tangible, inanimate objects over black life. It's also important to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the riots that are occurring now and the destruction is happening from white and non-black people of color letting out their own aggressions or their own rebellion in some wayward way and being opportunistic and not actually being for the movement, and that is negatively impacting the black people that are just trying to be heard and seen. Throughout this experience, just this present moment, I have gone through a range of emotions. Initially, when I heard the news all coming in at once about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, all occurring at once, I felt a sense of hopelessness. Throughout the entirety of my life, I have seen and witnessed via social media and in personal experience the injustices that have happened through false trust in police systems that have failed the black community incessantly. I've seen other protests occur as other members of the black community have become hashtags and names on a list to demonstrate the fact that some people do not want to acknowledge the fact that Black Lives Matter at all. I was particularly hopeless because we are presently in the time of a pandemic where everyone has orders to stay at home. And as soon as those orders have been slightly lifted, cops immediately start killing black folks. That's your first agenda? Everyone was talking about how hyped they were for outside to open back up. What were you hype about? Killing black people? That created a sense of hopelessness in me because I was already in the negative mindset because the world was already in a collective trauma of a pandemic. This was just added on. And seeing another name being added to the list is detrimental to should be detrimental and traumatizing and angering to anyone who values life, because these people are dying in vain. They say that they hope that the death that has happened does not end up being in vain and helps to invoke change, but the death of innocent black people is in vain. There is no reason for it, no purpose. People do not need to be murdered should not have to be murdered for a change to occur. I have felt annoyance and exhaustion trying to have conversations with people who I've called friends and acquaintances for years, refusing to acknowledge their own privileges, staying silent on matters this important. It has caused such anguish and turmoil within me, because these people that I grew up with, I can see that they do not genuinely value my life. I acknowledge that I am a racially ambiguous appearing person, so that makes me more approachable and acceptable in the racist society that we currently reside in. And it aggravates me trying to acknowledge and explain, even from my own personal privileged black experience, to the white people that I know, that I do not understand why they cannot sacrifice a little discomfort in order to grow and invoke a change that would allow for equity and equality and the ability to live without fear for black people. I do not think that it's fair that I am watching so many people pick and choose when they want to associate with the black community. They want to say the N-word, don't understand, which is a conversation for a whole nother day. They want to say the N-word. They want to take and emulate and appropriate black culture. They want to listen to black artists and view black art pieces and view black movies and be engulfed in black culture for entertainment and viewing pleasure and comfort and happiness. But when the black community reaches out asking for assistance, they remain silent, turn a blind eye. That's annoying, and it's exhausting trying to defend the idea that Black Lives Matter. It brings to the next emotion of desperation, desperately wanting the people that you love and care about and have grown up with to see you and hear you and acknowledge that you exist and deserve to live without fear, deserve to live on a level playing field. I don't even know if I'm finishing thoughts. Speaking of finishing thoughts, I think that wraps up all that I want to say presently. If I can figure it out, put links to a video by a video that I know that was created to allow for a contribution to various funds to make donations. If you don't have the means to personally donate, watching this video and not skipping any of the ads, all of the ad revenue will be going to various funds. I'll try and put those links in the description. If not, I will also write them in various locations on the screen to try and have that information available to you somewhere. Remember that change does not only occur via the protests and rioting and donations and petitions. Show up when it's time to vote. Your voice matters, your vote matters. You deserve to be heard. You can make a change, a big change, just by voting. So be sure to do that when that occurs, wherever that occurs, where you are. I don't know how to close this video off. I think that's all that there's more. I could vent about this for hours, but that's all I want to say in this video for now. I hope I made my points clear. Please be sure to educate yourself more and forever be looking at ways to learn and adjust and acknowledge the current events happening now. Be sure to prioritize your mental health and take care of yourself. Bless.